This video is going to talk you through the basic features covered in Lab 1 on HTML. All the files you will find on Blackboard, so they're in learning materials. There's a video here on downloading the zip file and setting up the files in Visual Studio Code. The zip file that you want is this one here. Okay, so that's already been done, and I've got my files sitting here in Visual Studio Code. You can save these as workspaces as well if you want to reopen them. The easiest thing is just drag the folder in to set the workspace up. So I've also opened up in the docs folder as a PDF. If you try and open it in Visual Studio Code, it'll look a little weird. May not even open it at all. So you need some other reader. The browsers will work as readers as well. So there's a PDF to read here. Okay, so in the PDF there's sections about structuring your files. So just do set up a sensible file structure wherever you choose to save your files. So these PDF was set up on the assumption that you'd be on the F drive on the university's network. If you can't do that, that's fine. Just save these files somewhere sensibly on your machine, so you've got a sensible file structure. So this is Web Dev, and we're in Lab 1. Just a note on naming conventions as well. Try and stick to lowercase. Avoid special characters. Avoid white space when you're naming files and folders. Things can get a little bit pedantic in the web world when it comes to naming conventions, so just try and keep your names nice and simple and nice and clean, as you'll see in the examples that I use. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. We've set that up as a workspace, so hopefully you've downloaded that, and then you can open the folder where you've stored your files. You can save workspaces so that you can just reopen a workspace as and when you need it to. A workspace just literally just points at a folder as to where you set up the files, but it is just as easy to just open up a folder. Okay, so now creating a file, creating a new file in Visual Studio Code. You have this icon here, so you can create yourself a new file from there. Just be careful as to where you are when you do that. I'll just step out of that because I was in that docs folder. So I'll just close that down, make sure I'm in the root folder here, top folder. Now when I recreate it, I'll just call that test, and you do need to make sure you put the file extension in. Notice that's all in lowercase, and I have put the file extension in, and Visual Studio Code picks up the fact that that is a HTML file. That's important because it's going to help you write the code if you've got that extension in there. So basic structure of HTML file is we have the concept of tags. So we have an opening and closing HTML tag that defines the document. So as a PDF site says there, open up index. It's completely blank. I just created a blank file for you, and the minimum that you will need is HTML like so. And you see it will automatically close that for you. So that indicates the extent of the document. That little white dot means this file isn't saved, so you can save it, file save or Control S, Command S on a Mac, or there's also an auto save option as well. So you're always going to need that in your document. As basic skeleton code, going to need a head as well. Now you'll notice Visual Studio Code does want to help you out here, so I don't have to always type the angle brackets there. So I could just type that in like so, and notice it automatically closes it for me, which is great, but we can speed things up even further because you can literally just type head and then hit tab, and it will set that up for you. So head is the brains of the document. That's where the metadata goes, as it's known, that provides descriptive information about the file. So any HTML file is going to have at least one head. Should only have one head and one body. So your basic HTML file is also going to have a body tag, not a dobby. They're going to have a body tag down here as well. That's a kind of minimum skeleton. Only one head, only one body, please. So say in the title, we place things, information about the file, so stuff that you generally won't see in the browser. So one is title, so that will be the title of the page. We can provide some text in there. That will appear in the tab when we come to view the page. Okay, now we should also indicate what kind of flavor of HTML we're using. So there's this thing here called doc type. It's slightly different from the other HTML tags I've shown you so far, and it does sit at the very top of the document. Up here, it's what's known as the doc type declaration, and it indicates that we're going to write a HTML file of using the latest version of HTML, which is something called HTML5. Here's another example of a meta tag that is indicating the character set that we expect this page to support, and that's used. And so I've put in UTF-8 there, which gives us the broader support. So we could use a full range of characters, not just English. We could use Chinese, Russian, Cyrillic, all kinds of stuff in our file if we chose to do that. Okay, and I'll give you a little tip there. Actually, when you're using Visual Studio Code, I've kind of laboriously typed all of that in, but a little tip is that you can just put in an exclamation mark and hit tab, and hey presto, it'll write all of that for you. Okay, with actually some additional stuff in there as well. Right, okay, so titled we've mentioned, it's going to appear in the browser tab. Let's show you that. So I've just got a title document there. Let's make that my first web page. So in order to view that, I'll just save it. And the quick and easiest way to view the files is to right click, copy the path, go across to a browser and stick that address, paste in there, and then you should be able to see the page. That'll be very exciting because we haven't put anything in the body, thus it's blank down here, but you can see the title appearing up there. So that's important. It's important for things like search engine optimization. It's important that a title should be unique within your web page. It's used when pages are bookmarked, when you use the back button. So it's important you put a unique title in there. You may want to think about contextualizing them. One technique is to use this pipe character here just to separate stuff out. So that would be saying that this is a page about the Sheffield Winter Gardens, and it's in the news section, and then that's the title of the page. So you can use these kind of contextual titles to make your pages easier to find in search engines. And I've just done this bit here, so copying the path in order to view it. I'm using Chrome. Chrome is really good for web development. Obviously there's other browsers out there, but you'll see as we progress through this, Chrome will give us lots of nice functionality. Okay, so the bulk of the stuff that we're going to do once we've got this set up is working down here in the body. So if you do find yourself writing code outside of the body, that's fairly unusual. Once you've set the thing up, the main content down here in terms of text and images and links, etc., will go inside of the body tag. And there are a whole kind of range of elements that you can use to do that. So the easiest one is just something called a paragraph. So again, I can just type in P and hit tab, and it should add a paragraph for me. So this is just a paragraph. So paragraph of text, you shouldn't put paragraphs inside of paragraphs. That's not valid HTML. You've just got a paragraph of text there, and it won't do anything particularly exciting. It'll just add the text to the page. We also have other fairly easy bits of HTML on the heading hierarchy. So you've got H1 through to H6, which are headings of decreasing importance. So H1 is your most important heading. And they go down. So it's like H2 is a subheading, H3 is a sub-subheading, etc. So it is a heading hierarchy. So it appears like this, but the visualization of this, what it looked like, we can change that with CSS later on. So don't get too hung up on the appearance of it. The H2 is going to be a little bit smaller. And they go down in size as you head through the H's. So it's a way to provide your document with a hierarchy for each section. And your text generally should appear in paragraphs like so. Okay, so as it says here, I was hinted at, that's wrong. Never put a paragraph inside a paragraph, that is invalid. If you did want what's known as a line break, so let's say you wanted a line break there for some reason, you can use an element called a BR, which is a line break. That's the first one of these we've seen which doesn't have a corresponding pair, and that's perfectly valid because it doesn't make any sense to wrap it around anything. You may see them written like that, which is what's known as a self-closing element, but that is valid, as is that. And in either case, you'll see it will put the line break in there. Avoid tricks like this, which I sometimes see students do, putting lots of line breaks in to try and move stuff around and position it. That is really cheating. I'll show you how you can position stuff much better than using those kind of hacks. So do avoid that kind of trick. So we talk about semantics in the world of web. What we mean by that is we want semantic markup. So the HTML elements should have meaning. So the classic one you've just seen is H1. It's heading 1. It's the most important heading in the document. So just bear in mind this idea of semantics. The HTML tags should describe themselves. Semantics being the study of meaning. So those are what's known as some examples of what we call block elements. You'll see how the content is appearing below each other in each case. You can have what's known as inline elements as well. These flow differently. They flow across the page from left to right. So an example of one of these would be B for bold, or strong is actually will do the same thing. So let's say I wanted to make this bold, then I could wrap a B tag around it, B for bold, or really what you should do is you should use strong. That will make it look bold, and it's more semantic because it's better for assistive technology screen readers. So you should use this if you're not going to use style sheets, which we'll talk more about later. So that's inline. You'll see that that won't appear on a new line. It will just apply the HTML flowing from left to right. You can also make stuff italic, so another classic inline element is EM for emphasis, and that will italicize stuff. So you have EM, and then you can place some content inside of that. Okay, so that will be italic. Both of these are, that could be I, that could be B. They're interchangeable. It's good practice to use these for assistive technologies. You can have something be bold and italic, which is a good way to kind of illustrate the way that tags should be nested, because you would have an emphasis tag there wrapped around it. So the order of these is important. So you have to be careful that because that's the last one opened, it should be the first one shut. So do try and put them in the correct order. So the last one open should be the first one shut. This kind of thing with that there would be considered malformed HTML. The browser will let you off, but do try and avoid that because these problems can come back and haunt you later on. So that's now bold and italic. Okay, so that covers that. Then the next kind of major feature I want to cover in this is links. So this is the anchor tag. The A tag, along with href, hypertext reference, is used to link from one page to another. So it's the first example of a tag that we've seen that uses these things called attributes. So within the tag itself, we've got an attribute here of href, and then that's where we've chose to link to. So I've got another little page over here called qualifications. It's already got some content in there, so I'm going to link to that from here. So I'll put this in a paragraph first of all, and then we'll put in an A tag. So I can just type A and hit tab, and so that notice you've got the space there, and you're actually inside the opening element. And then href, where do we want to go? We want to go to the qualifications page, and I need some text that I can click on. So go to qualifications, like so. Right, so now if I go over to here, I've got a hyperlink. So that's the text that was inside the anchor tags, and then that's the destination, so that when I click on it, off it goes and it takes me to that page. Okay, that's the basics of a hyperlink. There are lots of other nuances to that, so let's look at some of those, because what I did there is use what's known as a relative path, because these two files, I'm in this file and I want to link to this one, and they both live in the same folder, so it's easy to link from one to the other because they're both in the same place. If I created a new folder and I just called it info, and let's say that I moved the qualifications page, which I could do, into that info folder, so it'll move it for me. I can just drag it in there. So see, qualifications is now in info. This path is no longer valid. Let's show you that. So if I refresh and I click on this, I'm going to get this file not found, which is famously what's known as an error 404. So the path is incorrect because the file now lives inside of here. So I would have to say go into info / and then find the file, and that path is now valid. So let's go back and refresh, and I can click on that, and so notice the path here now is to go to the info qualifications page. Okay, so be careful of that. Be careful. This is a major area of problem for web developers, is what I call link trauma, getting the links wrong. Let's go back to this info page here. Let's say we wanted to put in a reciprocal link, so link back. So I'll put in a paragraph and I'll put in an anchor tag. And so how do I get back up to that index page? So I'm here, index is there. I have to say // and then I can pick up that index page. So that would be back to home, like so. So let's test that. Refresh, click on it. There's back to home. I can click on that and it takes me back to the index page. Okay, so that, again, that's a relative path because the link is depending on where our starting point is, and our starting point is in the info folder in this case. So we need to back up a directory to find that index page there. Okay, and there's examples of that in the PDF. So these can get more complex. There are what's known as site route relative paths, but if you get used to this kind of way of working initially, you can start to look at those as you dig further into it. One other kind of link that I'll show you just here is what's known as an absolute path. So again, I'll put in a paragraph and let's say that a tab, let's say I want to link to Alan website. Well, I need to know the full address for that, because obviously I can't just link to it directly because I don't own the files. So I could just put in a link like so, and that's what we call a relative path. So if I went and if I saved my file and in Chrome refreshed it, there's Shoe, and there's the address down there, so it should link me to what that indicates is I do need to, I got the address wrong. There we go. So let's put the address in correctly. Let's try again, and you can see that that has worked for me. So that's what we call an absolute link, because I've had to provide the absolute address. This, you see, is a partial address. It's a relative address because we don't know where on the web yet this would be potentially published to, because presumably it would be on a web server somewhere. Okay, so that's absolute and relative paths. The anchor tags have other attributes as well, just to introduce, just push this idea of attributes further. Attributes are always separated by a space, so I could say put a title one in there, and I could say my qualifications. What this is going to do for you, it just creates a little kind of pop-up, so that when I roll over that link, you can just see it there, it's come up with my qualifications. So just to gives you an extra little bit of functionality, it's nothing majorly important. And another one is that you could add in, I'll do it on this one going to another external location. You could put target in, and you can, there's various options, but one is underscore blank. So see again, you've got white space separating one attribute from another. That white space is important. You do need to make sure that it's there. Then you've got the property and the value of the attribute. So target blank, what's that going to do for me? Well, when I click on this, you'll notice up here I'll open a new tab. Okay, so that leaves my original page in the background and the page that I've linked to in a new tab. So sometimes that is something you would like to do. Right, okay. So other things I just want to cover in here then, lists. These are dead easy. So if you wanted a bulleted list in HTML, you use a combination of tags, use something called a UL, which is a unordered list. So again, I could just type UL in, because Visual Studio Code's got this thing called emit. So if I then hit tab, it'll automatically know that what I want is a UL for unordered list. And then you have LI for a list item. And again, you can hit tab. So, and then you can add, so these are in effect the bullets that you are adding to the list. Okay, so what you'll end up with is a simple bulleted list like so. So that's UL for unordered list. There is a variant on this if you chose to use it of OL. You'd need to change it at both ends, and that will give you an ordered list with it numbered. But there are lots of clever things that we can do with lists once we've looked at what's known as cascading style sheets. Okay, so don't worry too much about how this page looks. It looks horrible. That's because it's not the role of the HTML to make this page look nice. That's the role of the CSS. You'll often find lists, incidentally, as it says here in the PDF, used to list links. So this is an example of a list with some links in it. These with a little bit of CSS fairy dust is how we often create menu bars in web pages. Okay, images next. So a number of different image formats. Headline ones are GIFs, graphic interchange formats, JPEGs or PNGs. They're the three ones you're likely to use. In each case, you add an image with the image tag, and then you need to put in what's known as the src as the attribute. So similar to the href for the adding a link. This is the source. This is where the image lives within your file structure. So again, this is a relative path to where the image lives. So let's say I wanted an image in here. I'll put in a paragraph, and then I'll put in a image tag img. When I hit tab, it will cleverly know that what I need is a source. I've got some images here, so if I wanted dish1, I can just type in dish1.jpg, and then that will display the image. So I'll go back and refresh. Did I save it? Yes, I did, but the path is wrong. Okay, because I should have put it into images first of all, which I forgot to do. So there you go. That's proving the point that paths are always a problem. So the image is in there. So I'm here. So I need to say go into images first, and then you'll find it. And now we get the image. Okay, I'm zoomed right in, so it looks really weird. So that's the image. You notice that Visual Studio Code automatically put this alt in. This is to do with accessibility. So you need to provide some context for what the photo is. That's a picture of Jodrell Bank. So I'll just type that in there. We don't see any benefit, but that is important for accessibility for screen readers and indeed for ranking of pages from search engines like Google. So do make sure you put the alts in. And alternatively, put widths and heights in. Not hugely important. We'll find that you can do tricks like that with CSS. And then the final section in the PDF here is creating tables. Tables are built using a combination of HTML elements. So we use the table tag to outline the table. So when I talk about tables here, think of them in terms of kind of Excel spreadsheet type tables. So each one of these TRs generates a row, and then the TDs are the columns within the tables. So if I wanted a table to look like that, I would need this kind of HTML construct. So I'll just shove that into this little demo file. So there's my table. I've got a row there, and so I've got 2 rows, each with 3 columns. And what will that look like? It will just look like that. So by default, it doesn't look very nice, but you can see there is an underlying table there. If you wanted to see the kind of grid of the table, we should really use CSS to do that. But just to demo it, I'll just sneakily put something in here, which you shouldn't really use, but if I put border 1 in there, you will be able to see the table. Okay, there are better ways to do that. You'll notice it's put that in red. It's not a big fan of it in Visual Studio Code, but proves that the table is there. Tables we should really use for data. So if you've got a table of data, sort of thing that you create a table in Word for, or say that you have some data in Excel, then that's where we use tables in HTML. Do not use them for laying out the page, i.e. positioning images and text, which is a technique that is largely discredited in the web world. So your tables should be for data, like I've got in this example here with some qualifications and grades and dates. Might notice with this one, there is another difference here. We've got TH, that is table header, and that's a way that you can differentiate a table data cell from a table header cell. So most of these were TDs. The TH is a table header. Let's just replace that one. And it's a way that we can indicate to the browser that that there is the head of that column, as is that, as is that, as is that. And by default, they'll be made bold and centered. But CSS we can use to change all of that behavior, which we'll come to in a later session. Okay, that's a quick rattle through that lab. Hopefully that will support you going through it. So have a read through, and once you've done that, you should then get a little bit comfortable with moving on to CSS. Thank you.